Thank you, Councilman Kendall. I really appreciate it. Before we get started, I did just want us to take a moment and have a moment of silence before we begin. So if everybody could just bow your heads. Thank you. The conversation we're going to have today is going to be very important. And before we get started, I wanted to take a quick moment and recognize some key people who are here with us tonight. There are many members of the Metro Council who have taken time out of their busy days to come here, and I wanted to just recognize them. And as I say your name, please stand, because I think it's important for everybody to see who's here. We just heard from Ed Kendall, Bill Pridemore, Dave Rosenberg, Doug Pardue, Bob Mendez, Angie Henderson, Sharon Hurt, Karen Johnson, Jim Schulman. I think I saw Council Lady Jacobia Dow walk in. Thank you, Jacobia. And not the least, DeCosta Hastings, who also is a graduate of Pearl Cone. So thank you all for being here tonight. We also have several other elected officials with us. We have Harold Love, State Representative Harold Love Jr. We have County Clerk Brenda Wynn, Juvenile Court Clerk David Smith, Criminal Court Clerk Howard Gentry, Juvenile Court Judge Sheila Calloway. We have representatives from the DA's office. We have Don Diener from the PD's office. We have former school member Cheryl Mays, former council member Ludi Wallace, and Kathy Biggs from Cooper's office. So I think that just gives you an idea of how important this conversation is. I also would like to take a moment to thank Dr. Sonia Stewart for opening up Pearl Cone to have this very important conversation. And I also want to introduce you to my staff. I'm not going to specifically talk about who each one of them are, but if everybody who is on my staff could just come out and be visible and stand up, I would appreciate it. Eric and Lonell and Ashford, can you guys just, so that the folks in the community will know who you are, and anybody else that is here from my staff, please stand up. I know you saw lots of them as you were coming in. I want to thank all of the panelists for being with us and for everything that you all do today. A lot of this conversation started on the campaign trail, and it started with Howard Gentry. Howard Gentry raised this issue very forcefully and very eloquently, and I really appreciate that you did that, Howard, so thank you. You know, we do a lot of things right in Nashville. We're still a warm and welcoming place. People want to live here. But we still have a lot of work to do. After 2 years in a row, when our homicide rate had dropped below 45, that number has climbed to 67 in 2015. And that's 67 people whose families will never see them again. That's 67 people who will never laugh again. And many of those 67 people were young. 36 of them were between the ages of 13 and 25, including Giorgio Gray, who was shot and killed outside of his apartment in East Nashville on Saturday. Giorgio was 22. Giorgio was just the most recent young person who died violently this year. Trayana Burleson lost her life to a bullet 6 weeks ago, a bullet that was fired in the street over an argument. She was 14. Cameron Selman was killed early one October morning on a college campus, gunned down over a game. Cameron was 19. Brandon Williams was killed by gunfire inside a nightclub last spring. Brandon was 17. There are 32 other names of young people that I could read, that I could mention. These are children, and they died violent deaths in 2015. All too often, however, young people were also at the other end of the gun. And we all know that homicides don't happen in patterns that reflect the makeup of our population. 51 of those 66 victims that I just talked about were African American. That's more than 77%. As a city, as a community, as a people who care deeply about each other's health and safety, we can't stand for this. We need to be doing everything in our power to make sure we don't hear these kinds of numbers and stories anymore. Tonight is a beginning. It is a beginning to take a hard look at what we can do. We won't find a solution before we leave this auditorium tonight, but what we will do is start an extremely important community conversation about how we make Nashville safer. I want our community conversation to capture the feelings of hopelessness that exist in some parts of our city. I want to define the problem of youth violence in meaningful ways. I want us to ask the right questions, and I want to create a sense of how we can go forward and make a difference in this city that we all care deeply about. and I also want us to solve this problem. Your participation tonight is critical to help us identify what we should do to prevent young people from committing acts of violence. We're going to discuss 4 areas tonight and how they affect our violence and our youth and prevention. The 4 areas are economic opportunity, environment, family support and membership, and health and well-being. We want to hear from you tonight, but the work is not going to stop after we leave here. Over the next 3 months, my office will bring the community together again to create a plan that will guide our efforts to prevent youth violence in Nashville. By early March, I want a concrete action plan that builds on the foundation we already have in place to prevent youth violence. I want us to identify the challenges and needs, articulate our key principles, goals, and objectives, incorporate all of the input from our very important local partners and community members and youth, acknowledge where our resources are limited, incorporate the best practices and important lessons that we can learn from around the country, and lay out a framework and a blueprint that achieves success in reducing youth violence. And that includes having accountability measures for outcomes. I recently read an article that described the young people that we're talking about as opportunity youth, not at-risk youth, not disaffected youth, but opportunity youth. That's how I hope that we can think about what we're doing here. These young people have opportunities to do great things if they're moving in the right direction. They have opportunities to shine if we give them reasons for hope. And we have an opportunity to do that because what this is really about is about connecting youth to hope and then connecting that to opportunity. There's a young person in my life too. I have a 20-year-old son. His name is Max. He's in college. And I want every young person growing up in Nashville to have the same opportunities that he's had. I did not know Trianta Burleson or Cameron Selman or Brandon Williams or any of the other young people who were killed in Nashville this year, and I wish I had. I wish most of all, though, that they could have had a chance to realize their potential. I can't bring them back, but all of us together can honor their memory by working to prevent more violence. We are one city, one community, and we can solve this problem together. But my administration cannot do this alone. Metro government can't do it alone. It's going to take all of us, not-for-profits, schools, churches, the faith community, the business community, fraternities and sororities, everyone. We all have a role to play. Together, I know that we can make Nashville safer. We can create a place where youth have a hope and they have an opportunity to succeed. And we're going to start that very important work tonight. Thank you.